I move that the question be now put.
Mr. Chairman.
No, when I stand up, you sit down. Thank you. I'm not going to accept the closure now because to date there has been, I think it's fair to say, fierce debate and debate with slightly different alliances and with members and parties with different points of view. And I don't think we've had much repetition, and actually the speeches have mainly been relevant.
Mr. Chairman.
Chris Farfaway.
Mr. Chair, and I hope I can continue the relevancy that you've just commented on. But I do want to pick up where my colleague Rino Titikatini finished his speech, because he did want to make one point. The point, and potentially a question that I have for the Minister around Clause 11(1)(a), is that, yes, it is an improvement on this piece of legislation that two of the members appointed to the ECAN board must be recommended chaired by Ngāi Tahu. The principle on this side of the House is that we don't agree with government appointees to this board, so we won't be supporting that, but it is an improvement. And Mr Titikatini talked about a precedent being set here, and actually I think the precedent was set in a piece of legislation that went through this House last week around Regenerate Christchurch, where we saw much more consultation from the government with the people of Canterbury, not just with Ngāi Tahu, but also an onus put on Regenerate Canterbury to seek wider input about things that it wants to do in Christchurch. So my question to the Minister is, why isn't there the same spirit in this piece of legislation? And I think the Select Committee itself made a good start of it by including Ngāi Tahu within the realms of Clause 11, but why didn't you go further? Why didn't you use the template used by Jerry Brownlee in that Regenerate Christchurch? Why didn't the Minister use the template put in by Jerry Brownlee to include and to allow more of a local voice when you have started that process with Clause 11(1)(a) and 11(1)(b)? Mr Chair, 11(1)(a) and (b) operationalise the ability for the government to appoint up to 6 members to the ECAN board. Something that on this side of the House has been, the case has been made in part 1, a debate that we disagree with. And there has been a lot of, as the Chair has said, a fierce debate within this House, but also debate by people who have submitted, but also some facts pointed out by officials around the dubious nature of not putting this out to a wider vote, a complete vote for Cantabrians. And I mentioned some passages of the regulatory impact statement in my part 1 speech, but I think the departmental disclosure statement in this instance is helpful here when it talks about concerns that the officials have around the objectives for the reform, and I'm quoting here, Mr Chair, around the government appointees in 11(1)(a) and (b), contain clear trade-offs between perceptions of efficiency and environmental stewardship and local democratic accountability. They go on to say these are difficult to balance without objective information about previous and potential regulatory outcomes, so the assessment of options largely relies on subjective valuations, which the government obviously thinks rests on their side of the argument. They go on to say that the fact that no alternative options were consulted on and the proposals from stakeholders have received limited consideration suggests that the full range of feasible options has not been examined. In plain English, Mr Chair, that is saying that 11(1)(a) and (b), allowing the government to appoint up to 6 councillors or commissioners to the ECAN board, is something that the government has blindly done and didn't look at any other options. Didn't look at full democracy, didn't look at putting it out to the people of Canterbury. It made up its mind at the very beginning to put in these clauses, 11(1)(a) and 1(b), which says that within the 3 members must be appointed by the responsible ministers within no later than 28 days after the transition day, so whenever, I think that means the other 6 members are elected, and they can appoint 3 more under 11(1)(a)(b). I'd also like to pose to the Minister another question around the intention of the appointment of board members. During his speeches from the chair, he has said that it is about continuity. But back in 2010, it was something a lot different to continuity. And if I can quote the Minister, he said, "The extent of the gap between the capability of ECAN and what is required for it to adequately manage freshwater issues is enormous and unprecedented." Fair enough, the government can have that concern. He went on to say a very large backlog of outstanding issues needs to be addressed before water management in the region reaches... Mr Chair. Mr Chair. Mr Chair.
Sir William